types of zoning we have in the hill. The entire hill is limited to either 40 feet or 50 feet. That's the entire historic district, the entire hill. Do you think it's right or fair, can be justified that a single project on a single parcel should be granted a zoning designation that allows it to be built to 90 feet? Mr. Badhwar?
I don't know enough about this, so I'll speak my time.
Mr. Thompson?
No.
I think you take it case by case. We absolutely should be having a conversation. Whatever we do with zoning, whenever we go through zoning changes, go through planning and development, it's part of the community conversation. 1 story is a missed opportunity, 10 stories way too tall. What's in between? That's for the community to have a conversation, and that's exactly what we went through, and that's what the ANC, I think, really helped guide through, was come up with what is exactly the height that we want to go with. And so, your question is, do I believe that we should have the conversation to go through and make decisions about what those heights are, parcel by parcel? Absolutely, I think we should have a conversation.
I am Rochelle Woodard, and I live in the fabulous Hill East. I'm going to ask a question that's Hill East. All right. It's Hill East focused. And let me just say, some of the candidates at the table have not been involved in DC politics, and I appreciate that. I myself am not interested in another 4 years of the existing administration. So I want to hear new, fresh ideas. If you don't know an answer, that's perfectly fine to say, I don't know, I'll get back to you. Flowery language does nothing for me. So, and promises does nothing for me because I always hear promises. Specifically, I'm talking about Reservation 13, green space, and mixed-use residential housing. We have Reservation 13, we have a master plan that's been on the books for years and years, and there has been virtually no motion. Now, yes, I know that 3 parcels have been put up for consideration of bids or whatever the lingo is, but my immediate community has not heard any kind of movement on those parcels. And what we continue to hear are promises that people are looking at, but nothing is being done. So, new candidates, people who are interested, please tell me what your vision is to get movement on Reservation 13.
Mr. Thompson?
If we can keep this mic working. Okay. There's one project that's almost slated to start very soon. Blue Sky Donatelli is slated to get going very soon. Let's get that underway. Because you know better than I do, it's already zoned for affordable housing. We've talked about making sure that we open up pathways to the riverfront. Let's get started on the first project. And see where we go from there. The master plan called for lots of things, but this also gives us an opportunity to build the affordable housing that we spoke of. This also gives us an opportunity to put people back to work. This is the multiplier effect that I've spoken of earlier tonight. Put people back to work constructing these projects. District residents working on these projects, and district residents being trained on these projects. That's what I want to see. I want to see a greater mix of retail options at this site, places that you can walk to, places where we all remember Trojan. We lost that a long time ago, but it would be great to have something like that back at Reservation 13. And let's look just to the north of Reservation 13, and let's dig up the parking lots at RFK Stadium. Let's put playing fields. I coached Little League. I played baseball in the city as an adult. We've got to go to parks in Maryland and Virginia that are really nice. It'd be great to see some parks like that right here in our own backyard.
Well, I definitely appreciate the support for the plan that we've been working on the north side of RFK. The Chris proposal is something I've worked with that team for several years, and something that we're going to move forward. It's a great idea, and I'm glad that that's gaining traction and building support. The question is, how do we move forward on Reservation 13 on the south side stadium? You know, the first parcel needs to be that catalyst. It really does. What I don't want to see is to see us further chop up Reservation 13, because then we start moving away from that master plan and the community that really helped create a vision around it. The moment we start chopping it up and doing parcel by parcel by parcel, we start losing the community benefit. We went through a fight not but a year ago when this mayor decided it was a great providing the city services, the vital city services that we need to look after all residents. We've got to put that money in a real meaningful way. That's going to also help us be able to take that next step on that next site and be able to move that forward. I don't want to chop it up though, because the moment we do, we're going to lose the community benefit and all the commitments and promises and shared vision that we've all created together for that site.
Mr. Badwar?
So I will admit again, I'm not having detailed information about Reservation 13. I would prefer to find better solutions that don't simply use taxpayer money to solve these intractable problems. And we talked about all those problems and how we can resolve those by eliminating some of the barriers. And we have a way for people to have meaningful lives. So in all cases, I would prefer to look for solutions that work better. I talked to two homeless shelters who are primarily privately funded. I think we just need to make sure that services such as these are not encumbered by the city, and we're not holding back these organizations in the city.
Thank you. Question?
Hi, my name is Bob Schleger. I live along H Street. It's remarkable to move to an area with such diversity, old and young, black and white, rich and poor. Outside of political fixes and political policy recommendations, what do you think the role of a DC councilman should be as a social leader in our community to bridge the divide between those communities to create more of an inclusive community where all can prosper and share?
Mr. Ross?
I think it's an absolutely great point, and frankly, that's exactly the role that you should be playing. I think it's very important. You know, being elected council member means you get to work on some budgets and you get to pass some laws. It also means being a leader in your community. You're absolutely right. And working on those things on H Street for the last several years has been a part of what I've done. And what we've done is really work to help grow local businesses, locally owned businesses. Over the last 10 years, we've had 100 new businesses that have been created on H Street. As there are 1,000 new jobs that have been created, and many of those are locally owned businesses. Those are local jobs, it's local employment. When you take a look at Beth and Lauren from Daily Rider, they live a couple of blocks away, and that's a local business that hires locally. You look at Alita Fitness Together. She lives nearby, she hires locally, she helps create a great dynamic environment here. That's part of what I've done on H Street. Worked very hard to create the type of community that serves all needs and has employment and job creation for all of our residents. Creating the type of community that we want doesn't happen by accident. You have to be very intentional, you have to bring urgency to it, and you have to have some vision. Absolutely.
Mr. Badwar?
So my definition of community is one that is based on voluntary action and voluntary association. It is not based on forced association. I see a city council member as a servant, not a leader who imposes their desires and wills on other people. I see communities forming all the time, naturally, and I think my job would be to make sure that they can form more naturally than they have. And as one example, in a school I will not name, we were doing a fundraiser, a bake sale, and since you're not allowed to sell anything because you don't have a food license, we had to we had to ask for donations. It's the same thing essentially. I think the laws here sort of make a mockery of what people do. They put you in danger, and those are the kinds of things that I would look to remove that stop communities from forming and associating.
Mr. Johnson?
My time in public service has taught me one thing. You're never off the clock. You're always working hard. You're always trying to provide services and trying to bind your community together. Think about Capitol Hill. Think about Ward 6 for a second. It's black, it's white, it's Asian, it's Hispanic, it's old, it's young, it's rich, it's poor. We've got politicos and plumbers, all living and sharing the same neighborhood. Our goal has to be to keep moving in the same direction for everyone. Everyone should feel like they've got skin in the game, and like the progress that's happening in Ward 6 is happening for everyone. We've seen progress, yes, but we've also seen folks left out of progress. We've got to make sure that we continue to have a greater mix of services, regional services here in Ward 6. These are some of the things we want. I like to take my wife out for a great night and a good meal as much as the next person. But I also want to make sure that we've got other regional services and professional services here in Ward 6. These are some of the things that we've got to make sure that we're providing. We can do that through a number of processes, either through an RFP process, through zoning, through tax incentives. These are some of the
Question?
Hi, my name is Sarah Carr, and I have a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old at home who will be entering the public school system. As you know, the Deputy Mayor of Education is leading a committee to review student school assignment policies as well as school boundaries. One of the proposals on the table would move DC to an all-lottery system and move away from in-boundary neighborhood schools, one where you know exactly which school you have the right to attend. And I believe this is being considered at all grade levels, elementary, middle, and high school. I was wondering what your thoughts were on that and the advisability of such a policy.
My understanding of that is that as long as there's space in the school, then you can go attend that school from out of bounds. I do like the single lottery idea that Charles talked about, and so I think giving parents the ability to send their child to another school if there's a space available is always a good thing.
Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Joe. Our first priority has to be to have strong traditional public schools. That's got to be our first priority. I'm concerned about some of the reports that I'm hearing about the redistricting plan. I think that parents here in Ward 6 want to send their kids to schools in their own neighborhood. They don't want to look down the street and see a high school or see a school that they can't send their kids to. I'm concerned when we're talking about opening up additional slots and essentially removing slots for parents from Ward 6. These are issues that we should be concerned about. When Mario is in my backyard, one of our flagship elementary schools, and I want to make sure that I don't know where she is anymore. I want to make sure that parents have the opportunity to again, if you're validating for Mario, that you can have your kid at Mario. That's where we've got to be focused.
So if I understand your question correctly, you're asking whether or not people would support doing away with boundary neighborhood schools. And I do not support that, absolutely not. A neighborhood school, when you have a truly neighborhood school, you're going to have a great and successful school. You know, we use tests a little too much, and we use metrics to measure each of our schools. There's a lot of things that are measured in schools that are not going to ever show up, and you're never going to be able to capture the metric. But what tells me you've got a neighborhood school. When we do a walk to school day or a bike to school day, I can tell you based off what I see, the number of people that are streaming towards the school, the number of parents that are walking their kids there. If you show me a school with a little bike rack out front, a whole troop of parents walking in, I'll show you a successful school. Neighborhood schools work because you've got neighbors that are very much invested directly in that neighborhood school. They volunteer there, they spend their time, they're volunteering for PTA. It's very important. When we have it scattered across the entire city, I don't think we end up with the same level of parent and neighbor engagement that you have in the neighborhood school. So I very much believe we need to keep and maintain and also fight for having neighborhood schools.
Question?
We have about 30 minutes left. I'm trying to go front to back, left to right. So let's get through about 10 more questions this coming here.
I'm Allison Weird, I live in Northeast. This is a city that we are all very fortunate to live in, but the disparity between the rich and the poor is growing greater every day. Last fall, the City Council voted on the Large Retailer Accountability Act. Walmart and other large box retail stores are getting huge subsidies from the government. The sites that are being selected are being predominantly financed by public dollars. The notion that any job is a good job is absolutely and patently false. If we expect people to go to work, they should be able to go to work and raise their families with one income and not have to rely on public health care subsidies. I personally believe the DC Council failed us in not voting for the Large Retailer Accountability Act because it gave Walmart the ability to unfairly compete against unionized grocery stores and made no accommodation or no requirement that they would provide health care for their workers. And Walmart has a particularly bad record of employment. I'm proud to say I'm a union member. And so I think that I would like to hear from the candidates about what they think the city needs to do moving forward about raising, not only just raising the minimum wage, but making sure that workers are getting the value and are being respected for the work they're doing, especially when you have retailers like Walmart that are making far too much money and are not paying their workers commensurate wages.
Mr. Thompson?
I would have voted for the legislation for some of the very reasons you mentioned. Multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporations come into the district and pay their workers' wages that still require them to seek public assistance. Means that we're subsidizing their existence. We're subsidizing we're subsidizing the employer. That's not a good idea. It's just not. We've got enough challenges here in the city that need to be met without having to provide our own subsidy for a multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation.
The final version of that bill, which I think is what you're really asking, I would not have voted for that final version of the bill. It had been amended and tortured in so many different ways that it didn't lift a wage for 4 years. It was targeting only one business. So here's what we did instead. Rather than increase that wage 4 years from now for 3,000 employees working DC residents, we increased the minimum wage for 40,000 DC residents and employees. I'm very proud that I'm the only one up here on the stage who was there at the rallies, who was working to make sure that we increased the minimum wage, and we did it in a real, meaningful way. But it hasn't gone far enough. Part of what I've worked on is another part of this which is necessary, which is increasing the standard deduction. Right now, our low and moderate income households, they rely on standard deduction for their income taxes. It's a very important part of making sure they keep their paycheck at home. We're in the bottom half. I've drafted legislation. I've fought for this to increase that and put us at the top of the list. It's a real meaningful way, as we are also increasing the minimum wage for our working families, they're going to be able to keep more of their paycheck at home. That's going to be a very important part of what we do. I don't like Walmart. You're never going to find me at Walmart. You're not going to find me shopping at Walmart.com. But I don't believe that bill was the right way to get at it, and I think that what we did accomplish together was increase wages for 40,000 workers in the city. It's incredibly important, and I'm very, very proud of the work that we're able to do to accomplish that together.
So, as I said earlier, no corporate welfare, I think we're all agreed on that. I wouldn't allow it for major corporations or for small businesses. Here's the dilemma. I think the minimum wage is a regressive tax on the poorest and least skilled members of our society. So we can appreciate the fact that a large number of people got a raise, and that's good. But the fact is that we had something like 34% unemployment in the 20 to 24 age bracket. Actually, I'm sorry, that's 13.7% unemployment. The 16 to 19 age bracket is 34%. So what we're saying is we're raising the bar for these people who have not been able to get a job, and we're saying we're going to exclude you from society, possibly for the rest of your life. Minimum wage jobs are job training, essentially. And when my parents got divorced, I lived pretty much around the poverty line for about 2 decades. It took a while to get out of that system, but we do have mobility, social mobility in this country, if you're willing to work hard. And one of the things that helps you get there is a stepping stone at the lowest levels. And so when we don't have that, when we eliminate the bottom rungs of the ladder, we hurt the people who need these jobs the most. So I would not agree that any job is a bad job. There are any job is a good job if it's a stepping stone to get somewhere else.
Hi, my name is Francesca Labasso, and I live in the Northeast. I'm at Gallaudet University, and I have been a long-time activist for universal health care, which is why I moved to this city to come work for our nurses. And what's been really sad for me is that I hear from our nurses every single day about how much they struggle to be able to provide care for their patients. And it basically comes down to staffing. They're consistently, constantly understaffed. One of many examples I could give is I heard from some of our nurses that work at Providence Hospital that in the psych ward sometimes there'll be 2 nurses to 24 or 25 very ill psych patients, and 2 nurses to 25 psych patients. And the way that hospital is set up, sometimes to get the medication that's needed, they have to go to a different building, leaving 1 nurse to 25 patients, which is clearly not safe for the nurse or the patient. So, and that's just one example of many that I've heard that are quite terrifying for the health of everyone in the district. So my concern is, or what I've heard from my nurses is that, they know the solution to this problem. They need more nurses. And having hospitals make that decision hasn't worked. They go to their managers all the time asking for, sure. So basically, going to hospitals to work, we need legislation. So there's a bill pending currently before the district council that the Patient Protection Act that would create these mandated minimums. Do you support creating mandated minimum nurse to patient ratios? And if so, how will you help move this legislation forward? Thank you.
Mr. Allen?
Yes, I do. If it doesn't pass this council, I'll help them introduce it and work together to make sure other members are going to be on that bill as well. But this is also about making sure we try to get it done now. I've already met with representatives from Councilor Alexander's office, trying to encourage her, who's the chair of the committee, to try to move that bill forward. I think it's important. As somebody who's worked in hospitals, I know exactly how hard our nurses work, and I know that the healthcare is put in jeopardy when we don't have our nurses that are staffed appropriately, our hospitals and our providers are staffed appropriately. So absolutely, you've got my commitment to move that bill forward, and we're not waiting until January 2nd, 2015 to get at it, and we're doing it now.
To my knowledge of healthcare is far greater at a national level, and I would need to investigate whether these things are controllable at the district level. But the national healthcare system really stifles competition, it stifles choice, and I don't know which of those things I can affect at the city council level. But that's where I would attack the problem: is find out where we can open up choices, reduce the regulations that add friction, and try to solve the problem that way.
Mr. Thompson?
I've had the opportunity of working with your nurses on this particular issue. Been to some of the hospitals that have nursing shortages. Understand firsthand what it is to see. Ultimately, what you're talking about is making sure you provide patient care. That's what should drive this, not the hospital that are not the administration that's running the hospital. I hope that this gets done this year. I really do. We need courage from our council members to do this. That's what's required. Don't say you're going to do it at the beginning of the session and then back away from it as we get closer to it. When you raise your right hand, it's where to take that oath, and whether or not you're staff, your job is to make sure that you get this done, that you provide the best advice and counsel to your members. Make sure that this can get done. There's no reason we have to wait on this. But this is a 2-issue thing. You've got to make sure that you have proper staffing, because ultimately, you don't want to see your loved one suffering because there's only one nurse there to provide care. You don't want to see your loved ones in need of medical attention and have to hit the clicker several times if you're at Washington Hospital Center or some of the other regional hospitals, because you don't get the care that you need because we don't have to necessarily have a nursing shortage. We're just not staffing the hospitals appropriately. I'm very familiar with this issue. I've worked with your nurses. I know this issue well, and I hope that we can get this done sooner, so we don't have to deal with this. Will be in our rearview mirror when I take a seat on the council.